Hello everyone, and thanks for coming back to the channel. This is the Vendetti. This video will be different than my normal videos, mainly because I think it isn't so much about the flight performance, because this is kind of a nod to yesteryear, so to speak, of the design. We don't see much of this anymore, to where we have the vertical posts and we're going to have some top plate in view. It's pretty rare that we have this anymore. We've gone away from using as many posts as we can. We typically try to use as little material as we can in order to create the structure. But this particular machine I wanted to try out because it has the battery mounted more in the prop line, and a lot of those top pilots talk about that. Not that I'm a top pilot, but I wanted to give it a go. And obviously you can see there in the stack there is very little room to spare. I've got my receiver right on top of my board. I've actually used some low profile standoffs for my board, so it's quite low. You're really probably not going to be able to put a 4-in-1 ESC in there, so you're going to have to do what I did with the 4 Emax ESCs. There's been some reports of these burning up. I can't say for sure whether that's something that goes around a lot or not. I did read about how they can get hot, but obviously it's pretty cool right now, and they say not to cover these up, so that's the only tip I can give you. I do have the Armaton Oomph motors on here, the 1407 3850 kV, and you can see that I mounted my VTX02 down here at the tail. Hopefully you can see that. And then around here I bought a specialized, I can't remember the length, but it's an SMA to UFL connector, so I could use a pagoda up here on top, because I did want to fashion that. And that, all these things add weight. We've got an older camera that adds probably 10 grams. We've got this antenna, which probably adds another 10 grams. We've got 4 independent ESCs, which probably adds 4 or 5 grams. We've got extra posts in here, we'll probably add another 3 grams. So all these pieces in a micro start to add up. Now what I will say about it is that I noticed there was a slight difference in how it flew. I didn't notice a huge difference, and I also didn't notice a huge difference in tuning. Part of that could come from these motors. These are pretty notchy motors. You might be able to see that it just doesn't kick much. The magnets really grab pretty notchy. You could obviously get a different mount. You could get that one from Pyroflip, and you could mount a micro camera right here. I actually have some of those mounts, but I decided to build it as close as I could to how the designer intended it to be. You can see there I didn't quite have the right length of front post, or I didn't calculate that quite right, so I made up the difference with just a nylon nut, and I used super long screws. But back to the flight performance, I didn't notice a huge difference between this and a bottom slung battery. I'm starting to think that maybe it matters more the bigger your vehicle gets, because I hear those top pilots talking about it, but those guys primarily fly 5- and 6-inch quads now. I also am starting to wonder if our flight controllers just aren't so good now that there's not that much of a flight difference between different models. I suspect someone with better skill set could probably feel it better than I could. I think I've flown a fair bit. I think I've made like 200 and some odd videos, so I've flown somewhere around that number of vehicles. So I have what I think is a comparable experience, and I didn't see where the difference was. I don't want to tear apart the frame, because it is kind of a retro nod to the days of yore, or yesteryear, of we used to have frames like this. We used to have a lot of cutouts in the top like this. Camera protection used to be tantamount, because cameras used to be, I think cameras at one point in time were like $75. And that's before we had like Runcam and Foxeer and all these different players, like when you just had the HS1177, which was the top flight camera for a fair bit. I think that one came in around $75. I could be wrong. Comment down in the section down below if you know the actual price of that HS1177 when it was kind of top dog about 2 years ago. So when I built this and I flew it, I thought, well, let's go ahead and try it a little bit more micro-sized. So I built another one, same designer, Steph France. He seemed to have spent a lot of time and energy, and I applaud the time and energy he put into making it. And he has his carbon fiber cut through Armaton, which is always top-notch carbon, so you could be relatively sure you're not going to break the carbon. You're probably going to break something else first. But the smaller one, which fits 2.5-inch props, is about the same. And kind of the same experience, except for it's even harder to build, because you have less space. My stack isn't quite as low as it was on the other one. I didn't have any more of those really low profile nylon nuts. But you can see I don't even have, well, where is my receiver? Yeah, I wedged my receiver in down here. Let me get my pointer. So you might be able to see it. There's the heat shrink to my receiver, and then the antenna wire comes up into here. And then for FPV, I just took, I know that we have the TX200 and we have TX this and TX that are made to go right on the back of these. But quite honestly, the VTX202, the 200 milliwatt version of the Eachine, it fits on the back kind of nicely. You know, I just took some foam tape, stuck it on the back, and I don't know if you can see it. Maybe if I get that hole lined up. Then so the PCB part that attaches to the antenna kind of rests on the OSD connector down in there. And I did substitute out a longer antenna lead to get that as nice and proud as I could up there. There won't be any flight footage of this, unfortunately, because I had 6 flights and I didn't record any of them. And now this motor doesn't spin up, and I don't want to blame this motor. These are our Air Arsenal motors. They, Kenny, he's got a web shop where he sells some parts. I don't know if it's the motor or if it's the ESC that gave up. I haven't taken the time to tear it down to figure out what's going on for sure. But this motor doesn't spin anymore. So only 6 or 7 flights there. But in the 6 or 7 flights there, I could kind of feel that it was going to be a very, very similar experience to what I had with this one. We just got too much material, too much weight, and it's tough to work on. So the main point of this video is when you're looking at frames, we have to look at not only just what's new and what's cool, but the layout and how it impacts us. And you may want to try something, because this could really speak to you. It's not a frame for me. That doesn't mean it's a bad frame or there's something wrong with it, but this design might be something that you really like and really speaks to you and gives you more joy when you're under the goggles. I'll start some flight footage, nothing special here. Just give you a little idea of, it just gives you something to watch. Nothing special about it. I don't think I'm actually pushing it very hard. You'll probably see some dull spots within the video, but I want to reward you with some time and this discussion. If you have experiences with quads like this and you think there are differences and you can verbalize them, I'm more than happy to hear it. I just didn't notice any difference. So leave those experiences down in the comments below. I would be very interested to know how you feel as a pilot with different frame designs, specifically this kind of low top. What are those called? I don't even know what those are called. Low deck? It's not a squished. I'd call it a low deck. Top mounted battery. But leave those comments down below. Okay, I've talked too much. It's been too long. I'd only planned to be here for 5 minutes. Roll the flight footage.